Hi guys, in this tutorial I'm going to show you a technique to allow your game to scale to different resolutions by automatically putting in letterbox or pillar box sort of black bars to either the top and bottom or the left and right edges of your game, and it's going to scale both the scene and the UI. All we're going to need for this is one very simple script and a few little tweaks to your camera and UI. Okay, so first of all, let me show you what this does, and then I'll show you the problem. So this particular game that I've got here, this is designed for a 16 by 9 resolution, which is the most common. But if I try to put this in, say, 16:10, it's going to put in some black bars at the top. And if we put it in some sort of sillier resolutions, maybe a 4.3 or even like a vertical mobile resolution, it scales it as well. So that's the solution, and let me show you what it does if we don't do that. So what I've done now is I've undone those changes, and this is how it would look normally. So if I put this into 16:10, you can see that my UI is trying to scale here, but the scene doesn't. If I come back to the 16:9, I've put in two objects in my scene: this eyeball here, which is just touching that left hand edge, and this spider web, which is touching both the right and top edges. So these two are things that I'm looking out for, and then obviously the UI. So this text box, these two boxes here, and this panel are all UI, and they sort of scale by anchoring to various parts. So on 16:10, you can see immediately that they get cut off. The eyeball and the cobweb disappear. The UI is trying to scale, so it's still showing on the screen, but it doesn't look particularly good. If we go into a wider aspect, it's now showing parts of the scene that it shouldn't be, and my UI is now occupying parts that it shouldn't. And then if I go into a much smaller resolution, the UI is kind of screwing up here. So that's kind of still going to happen, you know, normally if you don't scale properly the whole game. This is the default behavior of attempting to scale the UI. Now, you might think, oh, you could just force the game to run in a particular resolution, and that kind of is possible to do, but it doesn't really solve the problem if somebody is physically running in a different resolution on their monitor. Now, where I quite often see this problem is on Itch. This game here is a recent game that I uploaded to Itch, and if you look at it at first glance, it might look okay, but in actual fact, this is wrong. This black area with the arena there, that should be square. If I put this full screen, you can see that is how it's supposed to render. That's how it's supposed to look. But if I go back to the default Itch size, it squashes it. And the reason for that is that Itch by default will play it will kind of put the embed into 16:10, and by default most games are going to be running at a ratio of 16:9 full HD. So that's the problem. Okay, so how do we fix it? So what we're going to be doing is manipulating the viewport rectangle which is associated with the camera. Just turned on my little mouse highlighter. Okay, so this viewport rectangle, by default, it's just X and Y. The positions are 0, and then the width and the height are 1. This is what we're going to be manipulating. So I've created a script here called camera letterbox, and we need to add that script over to the main camera. This allows you to put in your target aspect ratio. So this I have put 16 by 9, and then let me show you the actual code behind this. It's actually pretty simple. So we take the aspect ratio, and then we calculate that over here. So this is just going to be a float, so that's going to be like 1777 for the 16:9, and then we cache the rectangle of the camera in the original camera rect, because we need to make sure that is set back when this stops running, otherwise it messes up your camera for the rest of your development. And then we're also keeping track of the width and height of the screen, because we only want to make a change when the actual resolution has changed. So all I'm doing here on the update is I'm just checking to see whether or not the resolution has changed, and if so, we call this update camera. The reason it's in awake as well is just to make sure that it's done on the very first frame, otherwise you might just have just a very slight flicker before the update is run. So on the update camera here, we're doing a calculation based on the screen size. And then what we're doing is we're manipulating that viewport rect, which is on the camera. So we don't actually render black bars to the top and bottom or left and right. It looks that way. That's the impression that it gives. But what's actually happening is that on any area of the screen where the camera isn't actually being rendered, what you'll see instead is the default back buffer, and by default that is just black, and so that's what gives the illusion. And then the other important part is that we have this on disable, which says just set the camera rectangle back to what it was before. Now there's a couple of other things that we need to do, or one thing. Let me just show you this as it is now. So if I press play here, okay, that's on. This is how it's supposed to be. If I do 16:10, we can see the scene is now correctly scaling, but the UI isn't. The UI still thinks we're in this bigger resolution. My text box there is going further up, and this is starting to get a little bit squashed. And if I put this into different resolutions, it gets even worse. So if I try a 4.3, it's trying to use all of this space, and it just doesn't look right. And of course, if I put in a silly resolution, we're going to get it very similar things. So we need to make some changes to the UI as well. So on my canvas, by default, this is set to screen space overlay. Now what you might have already been told for UI is to do this scale with screen size. By default, it's constant pixel size, which we do not want. As you can see, that screws things up there. I'll just put that back to full HD. So we want to scale with screen size, put in your target resolution that you want here, and then have match 0.5. That means it's matching equally on the width and the height. But what we want to change is, instead of screen space overlay, this needs to be screen space camera. That means that it's going to be following what the camera is doing. And then over here we have render camera, and I simply need to drag in, obviously it's kept it from before, drag in your main camera over there. This is the same. And now what this allows you to do is scale the UI as well. So if I play again, so this is how it is designed to look. I come to 16:10, it now puts in the black bars, but the whole lot looks the same. And now this whole screen is going to scale to any resolutions. Let's put in a really wide one. We get the black bars down the sides. If we've got a narrow one, 4.3, it just looks a lot smaller. And if we try to put it in a vertical one, which I think was this one, yeah, it doesn't look great, but at least the game is still looking how it should look. This over here, I've just uploaded this to a dummy project on Itch. It's not published yet, so you can't come and look at this, but I just wanted to make sure that it actually works. So I've just run this for the first time after uploading it, and you can see here you've got those black bars at the top and bottom, but the eyeball and the spider web are where they should be. If I go into full screen now, again, this is exactly how the game is supposed to look. Escape back out, and it scales properly. So that's exactly what I want for my web builds on Itch. But there is one other little thing. At the moment, this will only run when you play the game. If you were to sort of change things around in the editor, there's that wide one, it still doesn't show, but there is a simple thing that we can do. Up the top, we can put execute always, and what that means is that it's also going to execute in the editor. There we go. And so then we can actually see what this is going to do. You can change it in your editor mode without having to go into your actual play the game. What is that one? Don't know. So 9:16, 4.3. There we go. That's really it. All I wanted to do. One other thing, actually. At the moment, I'm doing this line which feels a little bit hacky. I'm just asking, has the screen changed? You'd think there'd be a better way of doing that. And I did have a look, and I found this, which is there's a class or a namespace called windowing, and then there's a class game window, and then there's something that we can call here resolution change this frame. But this is on Unity 6.4, which is currently in alpha. I could not find this in Unity 6.0 or 6.2. So I imagine this is coming soon. So hopefully there might be some other changes, and hopefully this kind of trick won't be needed. But for the moment, this is what's working for me. I hope you found it useful, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Speak to you next time.